gamers. So the first thing we're going to do is check this out. So I found out this like yesterday or day before that, and apparently there are no StarCraft tournaments announced. So I wanted to discuss this because there's some interesting things happening. I'm assuming because of that with AoE 4, which I'll discuss later. Like how does that impact AoE 4? Basically, I saw that a lot of players in StarCraft 2 are retiring. I've checked on the forums, and there's some players already posted that they retired and stuff like that. And that's because there's apparently no tournaments announced. So just to give you guys, I guess, a comparison. So these are like all the tournaments in AoE 4, including small and big ones. But if you go to like S tier tournament, we have 3 announced already. But I know that there's going to be like 2 more by the end of the year. So we're going to have like 7 tournaments this year, like major tournaments, 6-7 tournaments that are major tournaments this year. And then in A tier events, there's also going to be some A tier events are usually not announced in advance, but there's going to be the LAN in Denmark Steel Series. There's a LAN in Hamburg, and then there's most likely going to be another event that American are going to organize towards the end of the year. So if you compare this to StarCraft 2, right now the premier tournaments, nothing is announced for 2025. Like there's absolutely nothing. And the last major tournament they have had was, I guess this is like some kind of league, but it was in August last year, where in the Middle East it was obviously organized the massive tournament for $1,050,000. So if you go to major, there are some tournaments like Home Story Cup, but that's only happening in June. So not many things basically happening, and a lot of these already happened with some amount of money, but a lot of people are worried what's happening with the scene, because from what I know, GSL is not happening anymore. There was like some discussion about crowdfunding GSLs. I don't really know what's happening with that, but with GSL being gone, a lot of the Korean StarCraft 2 pros are back to Brood War, and with no ESL announcement for tournaments this year. For those that don't know, they usually announce it like Q4 of last year. They announced it for this year, sorry. And well, it's February now, and there's been no announcement or anything like that. So people are kind of wondering what's happening. I also saw this video that Tasteless uploaded, so I kind of want to check it out, because he might have some more info that I don't.
So a lot of people are asking, what is the deal with StarCraft 2 in the year 2025? As you may already know, or you may be noticing as you're watching this video, nothing in StarCraft has been announced yet. We don't know what's going on with GSL. We don't know if there's going to be any dream hacks or any other big overseas events. SSL, formerly known as ASL, has not been announced yet, although I'm actually pretty confident that'll be fine. That kind of is running on its own. It's funded by Soup, now Africa TV, now Soup. So that announcement should be coming, but even that's not been announced yet. I think in part because we don't have any studio dates booked for anything if there is StarCraft 2. And so how do we know if there's going to be anything with StarCraft 2 at all in the year? It's going to come down to whether or not it's going to be announced at the Esports World Cup. Now, for those of you, and by the way, I've found out a decent number of people that follow StarCraft are not really tuned into how do these leagues operate. You know, how do they make money? Who funds them? Who's in control of them? Who's making the decisions? So just a very brief rundown of the history of StarCraft all the way to now. StarCraft 1 was run by Kespa and Korean broadcast companies without the permission of Blizzard. Blizzard obviously wanted a piece of that, and so with StarCraft 2, Blizzard took full control.
Blizzard goblins.
And was supporting StarCraft 2 for about a decade. About a full decade, everything was run through Blizzard. It was why anytime you saw the StarCraft 2 World Finals, it was always at a BlizzCon, right? As time passed, it appeared that that's kind of where it was always going to be, and it made sense. Mike Morheim was a huge fan of StarCraft esports and really wanted to support it, and I think Blizzard did a great job back then. In some ways, that was kind of the golden era for StarCraft 2. Now, Blizzard is run by completely different people. I was just at the Blizzard headquarters about a month ago to film a Hearthstone commercial for the StarCraft PAX edition that was in Hearthstone.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It was kind of weird being down there. Great people, the new people that are there, but it's like interesting after going to in and out of the offices there for a long time to kind of see everybody's basically different. One of the big things that's happening now is Blizzard doesn't want to support esports. And one of the reasons why they don't want to support esports is because Overwatch League was such a catastrophic failure and a money sink.
Dude, I don't know how much people know about the Overwatch League. Blizzard just messed up so hard with Overwatch League, you guys don't understand. I talked about this before, because I don't know how much info is public, but when Overwatch came out, they wanted to make an Overwatch League. They announced it and everything, but they didn't have like sponsored already confirmed. And there was basically a lot of major sponsors that were like, well, we'll do it if the other sponsors do it. So there was a chance it was all gonna fall apart, but it did go through. And then Blizzard, like, for some reason, instead of committing all the stuff for esports into StarCraft 2, they were like, bro, we're gonna do it in Overwatch. I don't know if it's because they were like, oh, we messed up with StarCraft, so now with Overwatch we'll do it from the get-go. But they invested absurd amounts of money into Overwatch, and it completely flopped. Like, not like, yes, it did have viewers, yes, it did have players, but with the amount of money that was put in, it's a complete flop. And a waste of money, and a waste of time.
When Blizzard, when everybody that was at Blizzard ended up leaving and was forced out, we didn't really know what the future was going to be. At the same time, the Saudis bought the ESL, which is now known as EFG.
Oh, really?
There was a company called FACEIT, or a FACEIT group, I think. They funded a lot of the and produced a lot of the Counter-Strike events. They merged with ESL, which I think anybody who's followed esports since the early days knows ESL. They were a German-centered company that did a lot of the big international events. They also own DreamHack. While that's happened, the Saudis have decided to make the Esports World Cup. And so pretty much, I would say maybe like 85-90% of all esports titles are kind of under this umbrella. They're funding this in the hopes to bring tourism to Saudi Arabia. They're basically trying to rebuild Riyadh and Jeddah and their other cities to look more like Dubai. If you've been to Dubai, it's kind of a massive modern city in the desert. So the Saudis are trying to do that. They're not just doing this with esports, they're doing this with other sports as well. Golf is probably the prime example. They've done it with, or they're doing it with tennis and some other things too. So anyways, in order to understand whether or not anything will be happening with StarCraft 2, we have to find out if there will be a World Finals in the Esports World Cup for StarCraft. Because if that's going to be there, they need to have all these events that would be kind of like...
Does anyone know what their viewership was like for the World Cup, for the $1 million tournament?
Qualifiers or filter events to get into this World Finals. Now, as I'm going to scroll down here, you can see
20K.
We've got a lot of games you're probably already familiar with: Call of Duty, Counter-Strike 2, Dota, Street Fighter. Some you might not be as familiar with: Honor of Kings, Free Fire.
Mobile games.
Pretty much, almost all the major esports titles are here. Earlier today, League of Legends, Teamfight Tactics, and Valorant were all announced at the same time, so they worked out some kind of deal with Riot. And this leaves only 2 spots here. We see it's 17 days, 12 hours, and 19 minutes as of the recording of this video. When I look at this, there's only 3 games.
Imagine A4 there, bro. Imagine if we had like $1 million tournament. Holy shit.
That come to mind that have not been announced yet. One, the one that if you're watching this channel, you're probably crossing your fingers and hoping it's going to be there, would be StarCraft 2.
Wait, what if it's AoE 2 and AoE 4? Yo, imagine that if they did StarCraft and they do AoE 2 and AoE 4. That'd be crazy.
Other 2 would be Tekken 8 and Fortnite. And from what I know, both those games are not ideal. Those publishers are not as ideal or easy to work with. And I would also include Blizzard, probably not easy to work with as far as esports stuff goes. So we're hoping something is going to get sorted out. If not, it doesn't mean that there will be no StarCraft 2 tournaments, but it would mean that it is finally not officially being backed by any giga-rich org. So it doesn't mean that if there's no StarCraft 2 at the Esports World Cup, there can't be StarCraft 2 events or tournaments, but it will have to be completely community run. And so, assuming the countdown is correct, we will know in about 2.5 weeks.
Dude, what if AoE 4 gets announced?
Either way,
Imagine.
I think this will probably be the last year for StarCraft 2 to be officially backed.
Oh, shit.
And I know that there's a lot of doomers and naysayers in StarCraft in general. I am not one of them, but I think when you're hearing this from me, you should probably take it seriously. Even though the Saudis are funding these massive $1 million prize pools, they only want to work with publishers that will also work with them and support them. And that means, like, you know, working on the balance in the game, making maps, stuff like that. So if Blizzard's going to fully back out, which, by the way, I feel like this is sort of a mistake from Blizzard. You know, Blizzard really screwed up with Overwatch League. Nobody said you had to make something like Overwatch League. You know, they could easily have, let's say, StarCraft and Hearthstone here, and support the players and the people that love their game. But it's not going to happen, it looks like, this time. So hopefully we can get something with StarCraft 2. For those of you that are wondering, like, well, why... I get a lot of questions about this. Why does StarCraft 1 seem to be doing fine and StarCraft 2 seem to be kind of struggling?
StarCraft 1 is only doing fine in Korea. Like, that's it.
Even though, by the way, both the player bases are roughly the same. Why, if, as an example, is StarCraft 1 in Korea flourishing and doing very well? And
Wait, what? Wait, Brood War and StarCraft 2 have the same player base?
Why, if, as an example, is StarCraft 1 in Korea flourishing and doing very well, and StarCraft 2 seems to be on struggle street? Because StarCraft 1 was originally backed by people outside of Blizzard, it sort of had its own infrastructure, and was able to sustain itself without having to have direct funding from Blizzard. Now, when Blizzard came in and helped with StarCraft 2 and basically ran everything and funded it, it was great. In a lot of ways, StarCraft 2 was so much better run and so much better to be part of, to be honest, as someone who casted both, than StarCraft 1 was. The problem is when you pull the plug out from that, you've destroyed suddenly all the support systems and infrastructure and organizational powers that were there. And so it kind of knocks StarCraft 2 into this really bad spiral. The second reason is that StarCraft 1, all the biggest players stream constantly. Any evening in Korea, like before I go to bed, for instance, I've got 2 monitors on my PC. I don't sit at this computer when I'm not streaming. I have a computer in my living room that I hang out at. When I'm there, on my second monitor, I always have Brood War games that are happening live, watching first person with like Flash or Bisu or Best or any of those guys. So with StarCraft 2, a lot of the best players don't stream because they didn't have to, because they were making so much money from prize pools and being on teams. And that's another thing that's basically hurt the game. You know, you don't often see Cyril or Maru, as an example, streaming the game. And if they were to do that, that would probably also help. So StarCraft 2 doesn't mean that people have to stop playing it or there has to stop being prize pools. But if the Saudis do pull out here, we're going to have to start getting funding, whether it's community support or something, if the game's going to exist. On a bigger note, I do want to point out, I feel like the Esports World Cup should have an RTS game. I mean, I think we can all agree, whether or not you're a fan of RTS games, it's undeniable that this is one of the games that is an esport. Even if we're not the biggest, even if we're the size of, let's say, tennis compared to soccer, something should be there. And there's a couple RTS games that are old that, I don't know, maybe could fill this spot. Maybe Age of Empires? I don't know. But it just feels like you have to have something.
Okay, so this is something that I wanted to bring up. Like, there's this... So I've talked about this before, but a lot of people from StarCraft 2 community think that StarCraft 2 is the biggest game. Like, biggest RTS game. Like, this is just not true at all. Like, it's not true. And I hear this repeated constantly in the StarCraft 2 scene, where it's like, yeah, there's no other game as big as StarCraft, and there's no other RTS game as much as StarCraft. That's not true. AoE 2, first of all, AoE 2 beats StarCraft easily in terms of viewership. Easily. It's not even close, right? And AoE 2 has a big scene, right? There's constant patches, there's constant updates. like, StarCraft used to be the biggest RTS game. It is not anymore, okay? First of all, AoE 2 beats it. Now, I'm going to show you the player base in StarCraft. I try to find it, but there's no official information. There's some, like, numbers that it's like, you can kind of guess how many players there are and stuff like that, but not quite get the number that you need. But I actually looked at the viewership numbers in AoE 4 compared to StarCraft 2. So you guys said that the $20 million tournament, sorry, $1 million tournament StarCraft 2 had 20,000 viewers. So I looked at the last couple of tournaments in StarCraft. So this is the Masters Coliseum, which was one of the bigger tournaments that they've had. I mean, you can see Cyrillus playing Hero, Max Pax, Raynor. It had peak viewers of 14,236, right? So this was an online tournament. The last LAN event that they had that I could find, and I might be wrong, but this is December 1st, 2024. Peak viewers were 19,000, okay? So again, these are StarCraft 2 events. This is the, Home Star Cup is a big tournament in StarCraft 2. That's the peak viewership. And again, I'm finding all these numbers on Esports Chart's website. Now, the last tournament for Age of Empires 4 had a peak viewership of 33,000. Now, obviously, I'll be honest, a lot of those viewers did come from Marinelord's stream, right? Or Marinelord's team, sorry. But he is one of the players in the tournament, right? And whether the viewers come from Marinelord's team or not, they were viewers and they were watching the game and they were watching Age of Empires 4, right? And that was the peak viewership that we have had in the last event. You can see for the grand finals, Marinelord and I had basically 33,000 viewers. Anatan, Marinelord, me, Marinelord, and so on and so forth. Now, I did notice that I don't know if this counts the YouTube, but I know that EGC TV, for example, had like 5.7K on Twitch, but they also had like close to 2K on YouTube, right? Which I don't see anywhere here. So there were also other streams, other language streams. There were restreams and so on and so forth. So my point is that AoE 4 RTS viewership in general is a lot lower than other games, other genre games. Let's not kid ourselves. But, like, again, there's this whole narrative for a while that StarCraft 2 gets the most viewers. StarCraft 2 gets the most players. StarCraft 2 player numbers are still this and that. But that's just not true. StarCraft 2 is getting no updates. And hasn't been for a while. Like, yeah, there's that council and they're doing some balancing or whatever. But that, from what I've seen, there's been, like, drama with that too. And I think going forward, for StarCraft 2, this is, if there are no tournaments, it is terrible news. The reason for that is, when Blizzard stopped supporting StarCraft, I was obviously still there in StarCraft community, playing and making content and everything. It was bad, and the drop-off of players and stuff was noticeable, because whenever, I always said this, but whenever a company stops supporting their game, it is obviously very bad for that game, right? Because a lot of people see it, well, we know there's not going to be updates, we know there's not going to be new units, we know there's not going to be new campaigns, so they try to play something else because you want to play a game that's being developed, you know what I mean? Like, you want to play a game that's being worked on because it feels good, right? There's future, right? Same thing happened with HOTS. Like, when HOTS, when they abandoned that, the game just fucking flopped. Now, StarCraft 2 community has done a great job of keeping the tournament scene alive. You know, GSL in Korea and ASL in foreign scene. ESL did tournaments and stuff like that. So now, if those tournaments don't exist, the pro players, don't get me wrong, pro players in StarCraft 2 probably do love the game. I'm not saying they don't, but a lot of them are doing it full time. A lot of them are practicing playing full time. And if there are no tournaments, they can't make full time. Now, you could always say, well, they can just start streaming. Streaming in StarCraft 2 is, like Tasteless just mentioned, it's not everyone is streaming. Right? Not everyone's making content, and even if they all started streaming all of a sudden, the whole market for it will be oversaturated. So they probably, I don't know how, if they could make full time from doing that. But There are some pro players that, like I said, quit StarCraft 2. I know there's some players from StarCraft 2, including pros, that are trying Age of Empires 4. Update is there. Okay, thank you. I'll relog. There are some players that are trying out AoE 4. Maybe it's to switch to AoE 4. Maybe they're just trying it out because it feels bad. StarCraft 2 has no... It's not that it doesn't have future. I'm pretty sure there will be tournaments, but question is, are there going to be enough tournaments for you to sustain yourself full-time in StarCraft 2 competing, right? It's not about just having tournaments. It's like, can you feed 10, 20, 30 players in the game by just from the tournaments and from competition? And that's the question that is going to be a lot harder to answer, and that's something that I feel like will not be viable. And there's probably a lot of people that are waiting. They're still, it's their game. They don't want to quit it, but they're waiting to see what's going to happen, if something is going to be announced, and so on and so forth. So what does this mean for AoE 4? I don't think AoE 4 is suddenly going to get like 10,000 players joining in, and we're just going to increase the player base by, I don't know, whatever percentage. I do think that some players will be trying AoE 4 a lot more than they normally trickle in. Like over the past 6 months, there has been a big trickle of StarCraft 2 players, like just casual players, trying out a new thing. I don't think there's going to be like a massive surge of like there's crazy amount of players, but AoE 4 has been having growth in player base for the past 4 months, and then we also have 2 DLCs coming out this year, which is also going to increase the player numbers quite a bit. I personally hope, obviously I love Age of Empires 4, it's my main game, and I personally hope that, not that StarCraft 2 dies, but that people that are in StarCraft give a chance to AoE 4 and try it out and see if they like it. I think AoE 4 got released initially in a really bad state a few years ago, and right now the game is the best it's ever been. Balance-wise, gameplay-wise, and they are making more content, obviously actively, since there's 2 DLCs coming, so there's more content, there's going to be more civilizations, hopefully more campaigns and everything else, and there's going to be more tournaments. So right now, AoE 4 is getting like developed, there's tournaments, there's people coming into the scene of wanting to host tournaments. With all that, I do hope that people from StarCraft 2 try AoE 4, once again, give it another chance, because like I said, once it was released initially, it was in a pretty bad state. Yeah, and I personally hope, as someone who competes in Age of Empires 4 and creates content, I hope that StarCraft 2 pros come over to AoE 4, because I think it would be great to get some new competition, to get some new blood into the scene, see how well they would do, because I think that'd be exciting. Maybe they would have different like play styles and all that. So yeah, I personally welcome them, and I think most of the Age of Empires 4 community is obviously going to welcome new players and hope that people stick around. And at some point, if StarCraft 2 does get more tournaments or updates, they can always, if they dislike A4 for some reason, they can always go back to it. So yeah, for those that don't know, I've talked about this before, but Cyril has been playing Age of Empires 4 since the release of the game. He doesn't play 1v1s, but he plays team games like since the release of the game. Pretty actively. Like, he plays it quite a bit. Maybe if there's a downtime, maybe we'll see Cyril attempt. And to be fair, if this tournament, let's say, let's cope it up. Let's say these 2 spots are AoE 2 and AoE 4. And if there's like a $500,000 or $1 million tournament in AoE 4, I definitely see a lot of StarCraft 2 pros coming over to try and compete. I think that'd be great, personally. So, yeah. Anyway, that's all. Will StarCraft 2 die? I mean, it's not gonna die. RTS games never die, but this will definitely have a pretty big hit on the competitive scene. And then it's up to the pro players to decide what they want to do. And I think casual content like casts on YouTube, I think YouTube StarCraft is still going to do fine. Streaming in StarCraft is probably going to take a dip, and obviously esports is going to take a dip. So that's it. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't tried Age of Empires 4, it's an amazing game. In my opinion, it's the best RTS game right now. So, yeah, Twitch gamers, let's keep going.